So now we're going to code selection sort. And this is where we left off in our last video. I'll shrink this down and we'll start writing our function. So we'll say selection sort, we'll pass it this list. And now the first thing we have to do is create a for loop to loop through the list. So if you'll recall from the last video, we only went through indexes 0 through 4. And once you do that, everything is going to be sorted. So we're going to do this for the range of the length minus 1. Now for our next line of code, I'm going to enlarge this. This is going to be I here, I from the for loop. And remember, we set min index to be equal to 0. Well, that's actually going to be I. So let's shrink this down and put this in with the rest of our code. Min index on each one of these loops through this for loop is going to need to be set equal to I. And once we do that, we need to compare the item at min index to all of the other items after that in the list. So we'll have a separate for loop for that looks like this. Because we're looking at everything after the index of I, we're going to start at I plus 1. So this is going to be our start value for our for loop, and this is going to be our end value. And remember, the end value, we are going up to but not including this value. So the length is 6. That means we're going to go up to the index of 5. So let's enlarge the graph here and look at what that looks like. So for the first iteration, this is going to be I, and then j is going to be I plus 1. And min index is going to be equal to I, which is going to be the index of 0 in this case. Then we're going to compare that to the value at the index of j, and that one is lower, so we're going to set min index to be equal to j. But we're only going to set min index equal to j if the value at j is less than what we had previously stored at min index. So let's shrink this down and take a look at that. Let's bring our code back. We'll need an if statement that says if the item at the index of j is less than the item at the index of min index, then we'll set min index equal to j. So let's enlarge this again. And in this case, min index being equal to j means that it's equal to 1. And that second for loop is going to move the j through the list like this. And if we see another item that's less than min index, such as this, we'll set min index equal to j again, which in this case is 4. And then we'll continue to the end of the list like this. So now that that second for loop is done running, we know that min index equals 4, and we need to take the item at the index of min index and the item at the index of I and swap them. And once we do, that first item will be sorted. So let's shrink this down. And we'll be able to swap those two items with these 3 lines of code. I'm not going to walk through these because this is very similar to what we did in bubble sort to swap 2 items in the list. But there is a scenario where you don't want to run these 3 lines of code. And to walk through that, I'm going to enlarge this again. The second time through the first for loop, this second item is going to be I, and j will be I plus 1, so it'll be that next item over. And you can just look at this and see that the item at the index of I is going to remain the min index after we're finished. And that index is going to be 1. I'll put that up there. But that second for loop with the j is going to go through to the end of the list like this, and we don't have an item that needs to be swapped. So we have a situation where min index is the index of 1, and the index of I is equal to 1. So we know that the item at the index of I is sorted. I'll go ahead and color that in green. And I'll shrink this down and bring in those 3 lines of code that are used for swapping items. We don't want to run these 3 lines of code in this situation. So we're going to say if I is not equal to min index, only then do we want to run these 3 lines. In other words, if I and min index are equal, we don't want to run these 3 lines. Now let's put this in with the rest of our code like this. And if we run this code to completion, it will make our list look like this. And the only thing left to do would be to return the list. Now let's go look at this in VS Code. Okay, there is our selection sort function. And then we're going to call that function here with that same list that we were working with before, and we will print the results. So I'll run this, and that returns a sorted list 1 through 6. And it looks like we have a working function for selection sort.